SaySomething. It's like a podcast, but it's a vodcast, so you can listen and watch. It's like news talk or sports talk, but it's life talk, so we can walk the road together. Today's episode, Thinking It Through with Robin Pou, personality, purpose, and priorities, especially as it relates to those busy schedules. Thanks for joining us.
So I feel like each one of our topics are relevant, hopefully, to people, and it came up in a conversation recently because the question was, am I doing too much with a friend of mine and who is phenomenally capable, which is difficult when you're highly capable, to know what to say yes to and what to say no to. So here's our article for today in the New York Times a few weeks ago, The Busy Person's Lies. And this is written by a mother with a full-time job and 4 children. Now, how's life? Oh, busy, because that is sort of the answer. It's busy. So goes the mindless modern conversation, a constant assertion of the scarcity of time. A December Gallup poll found that 61% of working Americans said they did not have enough time to do the things they wanted to do. Some of us feel this more acutely than others. In a 2015 Pew Research survey found that 9 in 10 working mothers said they felt rushed all or some of the time. And so Robin is great about helping people, and this is from my view. He's really great at helping people kind of figure out what seems to be our theme, your identity. What what's your identity? Where are you finding your self-worth? All right, and who are you created to be? And then who are you, and how do you fit life into who you're created to be in a way that's productive and healthy and good? Is that fair?
Yeah, sure.
All right. There you go.
Sure. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. So let's say that I am hit with opportunities to do something, multiple things, and it is hard to say no for so many reasons. Fear, I think, is one of them, so I'd love for you to address that, why we don't say no.
The fact that there's an acronym, FOMO.
Yeah,
I love
we've
that.
named it now.
Right?
We've named it.
It really is fear of
missing out. Mm-hmm.
It's brutal.
Really? I'm so
Wait,
thankful.
you've never heard of that?
I've never heard of
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
There's-
feel horrible that we have just introduced
There's
you to.
FOMO, and there's also YOLO. You only live once.
FOMO and yellow. Okay, well, I feel better. I didn't know that basketball player. I still
Yeah.
don't remember his name.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Steph Curry.
Yeah, so you don't know FOMO, and
No.
I don't know
YOLO.
but I know FOMO. I hope I'm not intimately aware of FOMO, but I might be. So I'm glad you're here.
Let's do it.
All right, so that, and then how do we figure out what to say yes to?
So go back to the 9 out of 10. So why is everybody so busy? Why do we say that?
Because of the
FOMO. Fear of missing out.
Meaning that you're saying yes to things that you don't want to miss out on?
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is fear of literally being left out.
Okay.
Yes.
Not just missing out, but being left out. You know, if I don't sign up to be on this committee, well, then they won't ask me to do the next thing, and I really might want to do the next thing, or I won't be included in any of that, and then I'll be left alone, and I'm a loser, and I always thought I was a loser. You know, and there you go to your junior high self.
For women as well, I also think, in addition to what Kay said, there's also the fear of letting other people down.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
that's good too.
You know,
Yeah.
I think we're maybe wired more to be nurturers and to give. And I think it's harder to say, oh gosh, but I don't want to leave you stranded. I don't want to leave you in a lurch. If you're asking me, then I automatically feel this sense of obligation to help you.
Yeah.
On top of the acronyms, I think it all boils down to guilt. The guilt that we sometimes feel in saying no. And then yes, letting someone down or missing out or whatever that might be.
Sure.
Is guilt at the root of it all?
Well, I don't know. Let's figure it out. So the person that we were talking about before was basically saying that she was so busy, she didn't have enough time for herself, she couldn't say no to...
Definitely feeling stressed. Like there was and then it creeps into what you actually do care about.
Okay.
So time with her kids or whatever, because mentally she wasn't there. I was talking with somebody recently who redid their house, and she had no idea how mentally held captive she was going to be to redoing a house, because it was like every waking thought, and especially because of social media, she was on the sites looking at doorknobs, looking at everything, and it was sort of like, here are my kids and I'm looking at doorknobs, and it sort of surprised her. And then came in should we have done this? I had no idea,
Yeah.
and not wanting to give up what's important.
So why do you think that we experience this concept of fear of missing out? Because the question that I would ask my clients is, when you have said yes to something out of the fear of missing out, how has that ended up playing out? So last week I got invited to caddy for the Pro-Am, which is the professional amateur pairing for the Colonial over in Fort Worth. And I was like, yes, I want to do that. It has never been on my list to caddy for a friend at a Pro-Am, but it sounded really good, and I didn't want to miss out. Well,
that's a great example.
It's a really good example. Yeah. I had to move 7 clients. It was my busiest day, and I get great grace from them and, moving them. If it was really a hardship on them, I wouldn't have done it, but moved it and cleared the day, and I schlepped this guy's 35-pound bag as a second-class citizen, as a caddy, because there was an immediate step onto the course, hierarchy, and wrenched my back across 18 holes.
But you're hobnobbing.
So Karen, no, I'm not hobnobbing. No? I'm watching the hobnobbing with the professional and the other 4 who'd paid bukus of money to be in this Pro-Am. And I remember looking at it and I was like, okay, why did I say yes? And I got home and Karen said to my wife, she goes, well, how was it? And I was like, okay, I'm not going to complain. I mean, this is like a nice thing to go do. So I'm not complaining. But I just said, I've marked it off the list. Like, I don't need to do it again. And so then I went back and just evaluated, why did I say yes? I did think it was going to be something fun. I rarely sort of allow myself in the middle of the week, something like that. But I got a little bit of a taste of, if I'd made the decision for all the wrong reasons, I would have resented it. Like if I made the decision to do it out of, oh my gosh, I have to do it, or I won't get asked the next time, or all that whole string of thinking that you just laid out, I would be bitter and resentful about this wonderful opportunity that some people would give their left arm for, right?
Right.
And so it goes back to, what is your priority?
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So I'll ask you, do you brush your teeth?
Sometimes. Yes.
Look at that smile. We know the answer.
So why do you brush your teeth?
Hygiene. Socially acceptable. I couldn't sit here and talk to Kay right now, had I not.
Right. Oh, Brenda, I'm so used to unbrushed teeth.
Well, the unofficial sponsor is coffee, so we get that.
Well, and they're the teenage boys that just walk through here, and they aren't friends with their toothbrush.
But it's what we've been trained to do, and it's good hygiene. Good
Have
health.
your friends heard you complain that I just don't have enough time to brush my teeth?
Never.
Okay, it's because it's a priority. And you know why you're doing it, for all those reasons. Mm-hmm. So we make time for the things that are a priority,
for sure,
that are anchored in a complete understanding as to why we're doing it.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay? So there is no time management. There's no, let me sign up for a better time management tool. There's only priority management.
Oh, okay, so that's very interesting. Say it again.
So there's no such thing as time management. Time just keeps marching along. You cannot manage time. I mean, it is here. It just goes at the pace that it goes.
That's really good.
Isn't that good? I felt that way down here.
Yeah.
This is good.
But there's priority management.
Yeah.
So you have, the only thing that you have is this finite resource, which is time, because none of us gets out of this alive. So we only have a certain number of days, right?
None of us gets
And so how do you manage your priorities? Because if we're constantly pining away for the things that we don't have time to do, then what is it that's taking up that time? Now, this goes back to our thinking too, because there are some things that we have to do, right? So if you've chosen to have kids and you're going to send them to school, somebody's got to get them to school. So you have not reconciled for yourself why you're actually doing that if you're bitter and resentful about that taking up time in your day.
Let's go back to the priority, because I want to press into that a little bit. I think for some people it's not quite that black and white.
Okay.
Right? So, for instance, a mother might say, well, my kids are my priority, but then they get sucked into being the chair of some major charity event, and then, heading up some major PTA thing, and maybe they've got a business career in addition. And so they're saying yes to all these other things, and even though they would argue, as most of us would, that yes, our children are a priority, their children end up kind of coming behind all of those things. And so there's still a wrestling there, even though they would say their children are their priority.
Okay, so let's go back to that then. They get sucked into signing on the clipboard for the committee. Why did they get sucked into it? If they know that their kids are the priority, and if they know that being on the committee is going to take time away from that priority, which is their kids, what's this concept of them getting sucked into that commitment? Because if the school's the priority, then sign up for the committee, and let's be excited about that. If the kids are the priority, then we have to evaluate whether or not signing up on that clipboard is going to take away from the priority of the kids. Good is the enemy of great. We've got to decide what is our vision. People perish for lack of vision. Write the vision plain on tablets so that she who runs may read it. What is my vision? What is my focus? Because if signing up for this committee is additive to the goal of supporting my kids in whatever way that looks, then sign up for it and know that those are integrated strategies from a business lingo. Or know that they're opposite and choose against one for the other.
Right. I love what you said about putting it down on paper. That's so important. And I know for me, I can often catch myself in the moment running off to do something. And if it were just, that's why you'll find Post-it notes and Crayola markers all across my mirror to remind me of things that are important.
Oh, I love that.
The other thing is that we sign up for roles that are not suited to our giftedness.
True.
Because we get pressed by that person who says, will you please chair that? Well, you may not be administrative at all. You may be artistic in nature, so you should be doing the table decorations as opposed to chairing the event.
Yes.
If you're called to service in that way.
I was pulled into something for one of my boys' schools, and I told the lady up front, this is not my strong suit. I will be an Indian, but I do not want to be the chief on this.
Right.
Next thing I know, my name is signed up as the chief. And I was miserable. I couldn't wait for that to be over. It did not add to me as a mama. You know, it took time away. And sometimes I'm a chief within my wheelhouse. Other times, I'm okay to be the Indian. In fact, I like being the Indian.
Yes.
I have found that most people, when they are met face to face with their giftedness, in the strangest way, they'll go, oh, I'm not good at that. Like, you'll have somebody that really is incredible with hospitality. You know, they put everything out. Like, it happens that way. People walk into their home, they feel warm, they feel welcomed, and the person's going, oh no, I'm terrible at that. And I think that people tend to think that in order for something to be good, it has to be hard.
I was doing this workshop for the school, and so it's a yellow sticky note exercise, and so I put everybody in their team groups, and you put one character trait or attribute or strength on each sticky note, and then you literally physically stick it on people.
Oh, that's awesome.
So after 5 minutes, everybody's wearing their identity as seen by the people that they work closely with.
Yes,
so cool.
I've done that as well.
So then you basically disrobe yourself of your yellow stickies, and you make two piles. The pile of the sticky notes that have the items on it that resonate with you, and then the pile that don't resonate with you. So on the pile that, doesn't resonate with you, there's really only one of two things that can be true. Either the person who wrote it is wrong, or your interpretation of what they wrote is wrong. And so the group gets to then discuss, well, here are the three that don't resonate with me. And so one gentleman who was organized, he had 2 or 3 Post-it notes that said organized, that didn't resonate with him. And so
he didn't want to be organized?
He didn't think that was a strength.
Oh, okay.
To your point about some of our strengths, we're like, oh, I'm not really that organized.
With such ease.
Which is what he was saying to the group. And then someone in the group goes, is that also you that has every single Post-it note perfectly lined up in alphabetical order of the strings?
Yeah.
That is
and he goes,
so funny.
Yes. What comes naturally to us, we don't give much weight. And I think your point is a good one, is that somehow we think it has to be hard. And so when we get the perspective of others, especially those that we value, perhaps on the team that we work on, they're able to shine a light on what we do well, because they, the rest of the team, are relying on you to be organized.
Right, true.
If you don't believe that you're organized, then you're not operating in that intentionally to bring it to the table, and yet everybody's relying on you for it.
So we can't get our priorities straight until we know who we are.
And where you're going, what your vision is, what God's calling you to do.
How do we figure out who we are? Isn't that a crazy question?
No. No.
It's an important one.
It's an important one. And so there are tons of assessments that are out there. The ones that I use are Myers-Briggs, which is a personality assessment based on Carl Jung's work. Myers and Briggs came forward in World War II because they said, you know what, there'd be a lot fewer wars if we all understood each other. There have not been fewer wars, but perhaps more people know who they are, how they're wired, what their preferences.
right here.
ENFP.
ENFP.
ESTJ right here. Greek.
FOMO.
YOLO. YOLO.
OMG.
But you're ENFP?
Yeah,
okay.
So we're opposite.
We're opposite. So if we're going to go to dinner, as it relates to the sort of the P and the J, and I'm putting the car in reverse.
PB and J, I do know what
see?
that
So anyway, but let's draw this distinction, right? So if we're married and we're pulling the car out in the driveway, I'm going to be in my J, my very sort of interact with the world in a black and white.
mean?
Just judging.
Okay.
So I'm interacting with the world in a very decisive sort of black and white way. I'm going to say, hey, where are we going to dinner? She goes, oh, I don't know. And I was like, oh, no, well, we're going to figure it out because we need to know. And she's going to say, oh, well, let's just go to Preston Center. We'll figure it out. Because on the perceiving, she's a lot more open-ended and flexible and go with the flow.
Yeah, you are very flexible.
And I'll throw the car in park and I go, we are not going one step further until we know exactly where we're going. She goes, well, if we go to Hillstone, it's going to be a 45-minute wait. I don't care. Let's just decide. And if we don't know if we don't know that about each other, now all of a sudden we have friction. But if I understand, oh, well, she just goes with the flow, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to yield to her desire for that moment, or she's going to yield to mine.
Right.
But now we have a vocabulary for it so that we can actually appreciate just our wiring. Doesn't mean that you anchor yourself in that because it's just a preference, and you have to go outside of your preference. You have to be willing to adjust. In order to communicate better. And now we know. Or Strengths Finder, there's another one I use, Market Force, Emotional Intelligence. So there's a ton of assessments that help you better understand how you're naturally coming to the table. And then the big question from a coaching perspective is, are you willing to adjust your style in order to get a different result?
That's right.
Can I add to your assessments, aptitudes, testing? I know that's been very beneficial in our world. And I know there's different ways to go about that. But just even to know, and I think that goes more along the lines of giftedness, like really and truly what you're wired to do, and it's hereditary. And I can watch it play out just even within myself and my children, just what your aptitude is, and that you actually are happier working within that. When I went back to get a secondary degree, I took every entrance exam, and I went to the people that did the aptitude testing, and he said, well, whatever you do, don't go to law school. And I was like, oh, let me tell you where I can go to law school. It was sort of like, no, you didn't. And he was like, no, I'm not saying that you can't go. I'm telling you, you will be miserable, and here is why. And so I went to business school, and I remember sitting in the one class that would have been like a law class, and I was miserable. And I called the guy, and I was like, thank you so much. Thank you. Because it wasn't that I couldn't do it.
Right.
It's that I really wouldn't be happy. I don't know if that's the right word.
Well, it's not your preference. It's not how you're directing your energy. It's not how you're deriving your energy. And so that's the misnomer on personality types. Oh, well, I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert. Well, you have a preference for introversion. It doesn't mean you can't go to an environment that requires some extroversion elements or behaviors and succeed. It just means it's going to take more energy. And so I think we opt in or opt out based on some of those assessments, which is really the wrong interpretation of those assessments.
Well, and a lot of people, to your point, don't even understand the correct definition of introvert versus extrovert. They think an introvert is somebody that's shy and an extrovert is somebody that's outgoing, and that's actually not true. The true definition is whether or not you're energized by being around people.
Right.
So introverts need more breaks. They can only handle so much interaction before they need a break, whereas an extrovert is somebody who thrives on being around people much more often and frequently and consistently.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm an introvert. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Based on that definition,
that's
I'm
right.
an introvert.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Well, it's like my mom. She needs 30 minutes of alone time every single year.
30 minutes every year.
That's awesome.
But she's got to have that.
She just
She's go.
Constantly.
I'm sort of like that as well.
And so she's
funny.
like, oh
Every
yeah,
year.
I've got my 30 minutes this year of alone time. Wow. But it is just how you direct your energy and how you receive it. Because I get people, they're like, oh, well, it says I'm an introvert. And I was like, well, you have a preference for introversion. Well, I really like people. Well, so do people who have a preference for introversion. It just means that you prefer one-on-one or one to small group. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other distinction that you touched on is skills versus strengths. And Robin, I'm sure you can speak into this as well. Lots of people can be really good at things. But it really doesn't become a true strength until it also energizes them. And so that's really the true definition of a strength, is that you're consistently good at it and it energizes you at the same time. And so oftentimes, if you ask somebody to sit and reflect about the course of their day, what really energized you? What were you doing when you completely lost track of time and looked up and went, what? Where did the time go? Probably, if you dig into that, you were doing something that fits within your strengths versus just something you're good at.
Yeah.
Okay, so taking it back to the busy, the priorities, who you are, and the energizing, because let's say, you have a certain amount of time. It's just time, okay? And so if I'm doing something that I'm energized at, then there's actually significant more healthy living going on, okay? Which doesn't make me tired or resentful, but actually it builds up everyone around me. So possibly that could be part of the goal in trying to figure out what to put on your plate and what to just either not put on or put off for another day.
Yeah, so if I were sitting down with the proverbial woman that we've been talking about, I would say, what's your goal?
It's really me.
There you go. That's just her way of
friend.
That's her way of getting free coaching. Okay. So we'll call her Kay. So anyway, I was talking to Kay.
No, really, I say no to everything right now just to do it.
In 2016, I would say to her, I said, what's 2016 about for you? And so it's not New Year's resolutions and it's not one big goal. It's just, what is 2016 about? And
what if you're not a person that does that? Does that shock you?
Then you hire a coach.
No.
Because it's important work.
And so are you complaining about not having enough time and signing up for things that are not fruitful?
No, I really am not.
Okay.
But, so maybe you're saying that's what my priority is? Because I'm telling you, I'm just going to admit it. I'm the type of person that has never, balanced your checkbook. I worked at a bank and have never done that. I just don't think about
We've
stuff.
got a definitional issue.
Okay.
I'm saying, goals, the thought of
I didn't say goals.
Okay.
I didn't say goals. I said, what's 2016 about? And so you're a person...
2016 about?
Well, hang on. You're a woman who has written 2 books. So you're telling me that you can't balance a checkbook, but you can actually have an idea, interview people, write chapters, work with a group of people on a very methodical process to produce something. Okay?
Yes.
So whether or not you chose that to be a goal, you are about that project.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Okay?
Yes,
and that's
so
why
that rephrases it in my head.
And that's why I purposefully chose not to use the word goal.
Of course you did. Because he thinks before he speaks. Unlike someone else I know whose name might be Kay.
Well, half the world thinks and then acts, and the other half of the world acts and then thinks. And that's why we all succeed. Because if we sat around and thought about it before we acted, all of us, we'd be in a world of hurt.
But see, and I think into paralysis. I overthink, and I need to kind of trust myself a bit more.
See, and I'm known for being an activator, so I probably
that's very interesting.
I think enough to have a little bit of a plan because I'm a coach, and so I'm wired like that. But I absolutely do not overthink, and I'm prone to action. For sure.
If someone can't tell me what the year is generally going to be about, then I'm like, have fun, go have a good time.
Really?
Well, don't come back and complain to me that you don't have enough time.
Right.
Because when you say you don't have enough time, what you're doing is you're telling me that you're wanting for the ability to spend concerted, intentional time on a priority that currently is not getting covered.
Right.
So go have fun. It's not an issue for you.
So truth be told, you framing it that way, I do think about it. And I am very proactive in what I say yes or no to based on what my priorities are. And I really do. I think about the Lord and the way that He works, and rarely does He work in 2-day increments or 1 month. It's usually 7 to 40 years. And so in that world, it's easier to take back a perspective and not feel like it has to be done today,
Yeah.
and let go of the fears, because they aren't real.
Right. They're not
they
real.
are not real. And so I am not in the mode today that I was 10 years ago with a brood of little bitty children, where the physicality of it just alone was warrants saying no to almost everything.
Yes.
And it's like, please be free to say no.
Right.
And I've always wondered if it's a ploy that so much hits these young mothers just to rattle the cage, because it's like, just say no. Now is the time to say no.
Karen had a phrase during that period of time. She was like, oh, that's just not our season.
Right.
And when she would say that, I was like, oh, okay, so I'm pining away to go on a bike ride for 10 miles with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Okay, we just need to ride 2 blocks to the ice cream store.
Right.
Like, that's where we need to go. And she goes, that's just not our season right now. And I always wrestled with that because it seemed like a settling, like, oh, well, we're just giving up. And
so
then
glad
I
you
realized...
said that.
I realized we're not settling. We're being very realistic about the limitations that exist. I used to go and speak to a new member class at the church, and I would say to them, do not sign the clipboard that they're going to pass around, because this whole new member class is just a ploy for you to sign up for some committee and whatever. Just have
and
the
they kept having you come back.
Well, yeah, I haven't been back for about 5 or 7 years. But the whole point is, don't sign the clipboard until you've taken the spiritual gifts assessment. Because if you don't have craftsmanship as your spiritual gift and you sign up on the Habitat for Humanity clipboard, the minute you hit your thumb with the hammer, you're going to go, oh, church work isn't for me, and you'll go the other way because you'll just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, you don't have craftsmanship as your spiritual gift.
Right.
If it's administration, then sign up for things that are going to support what you're gifted at.
So that's the person who is working in a position and they're not necessarily thrilled about it, and they don't have time for the things they really do enjoy and where they're really gifted. So is it time to maybe put the pause button on accepting new things until you figured out your area of strength?
Provided that it's a wise pause, meaning if
Don't quit the job.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, we know what you're running from. Right. Let's figure out what you're running to. Don't make any decisions because the pain and the desperation has built up before they ever get to me.
That's a great point.
We know what you're running from. Let's figure out what you're running to.
Yes.
And I would tell you about 50% of the time for the career development focus on the clients that I've got, they end up staying at their current job because they change the way they're thinking about it. It's hard to get a new job.
Yeah.
And if you don't change the underlying thinking, then you're just going to be dissatisfied with that new job.
I'll give an example outside of the professional world, but I think about being a parent, and when I have several friends who've been through this, myself included, where we get frustrated because our kid is different in some way, and something gets labeled quirky for years and years. And then there's this frustration because they're not performing well in school, or they're not doing sports or whatever activity to the level that we think in our minds that they're capable of. And then suddenly we get this diagnosis that helps us understand whether it's ADD or autism or executive function disorder, whatever it might be. And then suddenly, because we have this awareness, it brings this new frame of reference and understanding that shifts something in us, where we say, okay, well, I can't place this expectation on you because I know what you're capable of. I understand what your limitations are. And so it shifts something in us so we react differently in the situation. I think that happens professionally as well.
You just changed your thinking.
That's right.
Which is what you were saying.
With every new piece of information, you have an opportunity to make a different decision. And so in that instance, you made a different decision about the expectations for the situation.
That's right.
Because the delta between our expectations and what actually happens, reality, that's the pain we experience in life. And so when we're looking at our expectations, we've got to really evaluate whether or not those are anchored in truth.
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit more.
I think expectations is going to have to be another. That one's so big.
Oh my
and
for sure.
It's a topic I love. Because expectations, so much of this is so grounded in comparison. And which it's not a bad thing. It's just our relationship with it that can be bad.
Yes.
And anyway, so I love that.
Going back to a little bit of what you said.
Is that fair to say?
I agree, yeah.
That's sort of hitting a pause button,
That's a big old deal. Okay, so there's a book, I think it's Life is Good. But the phraseology in it was, instead of I have to drive the kids to school, is I get to drive the kids to school.
Yes.
And again, that shift in perspective can change your experience entirely. So where it's no longer,
2 Corinthians 10:5, take captive your thoughts
Yes.
and make them obedient to Christ. And we sort of change up that word obedient, but in the Greek it means to listen. So take captive your thoughts and make them listen to Christ. And your thoughts, the Greek of that is your spiritual capacity for truth. So take captive your spiritual capacity for truth and make it listen to Jesus, to Christ. It's
Okay,
very
There's a great
powerful.
ending thought right there.
It does. and let's just say that fully goes back to surrender.
Yes.
And throws in the words I love, the by, through, and in, because take captive my thoughts and make them obedient to Christ can feel heavy to me, because I can't do that. And the way that you just described it is you were never supposed to. It's put your eyes on me, not on you. Come to me. And
listen.
Yep. And
2
listen.
ears, 1 mouth.
We can
And
in that
it's
proportion.
easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
So just finishing up just on this FOMO, because everybody is really attached to FOMO. So this year's word is fear. And so last year's word was rest.
Yeah.
And so y'all were talking about that earlier. And I didn't like fear. I was like, oh, it's negative. I don't like that word. And it's always given to me from him, or at least I know that it is, when the acronym follows right behind the word. And so fear.
Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the word comes to me and I'm like, oh, did I think of that or did God give that to me? And I know that God gave it to me when the acronym FEAR comes right behind it. So
Okay, and let's go back just to be sure that everybody's on the same page. You usually, every year. How long have you done this?
Almost 10 years.
Okay, so he has a word of the year.
As do I.
Do you really?
I do.
What's
Every
your word
year,
this year?
Yes, patience.
Okay. So
That would be
fear.
hard to figure out an acronym.
That would be. But she could do it. If anyone could do it would be Erin with all her sticky notes. All right. So.
People, act, think.
Okay, so that's what Robin does, and does it for the whole family, and so it helps bring focus into their effort, which goes back to what you were saying: when to say yes, when to say no. Does it fit into your vision? And so it helps you with your vision. Okay, so
Yeah, so it's a
fear.
little bit of a rally cry for us. And so
Okay.
this year it's fear. Last year it was rest. And so the acronym is faith eradicates all reluctance.
Faith eradicates.
All
That's
reluctance.
awesome.
That's good. Yeah, I can see that.
So this is not about never fearing.
Yes.
This is about what you do in the face of that fear. So we're going to be presented, as we have talked about this morning, with the fear of missing out.
Yes.
Okay, you're going to have that fear. Well, it's not about not having the fear. It's about what you do in the face of the fear. And so we're going to
Yes.
focus on our faith because it eradicates all reluctance. Reluctance to, well, I know I shouldn't say yes to that, but I'm going to say yes anyway because I don't want the fear of man or the fear of woman thinking that I'm any less. I'm shouldering my burden for the school.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Who cares? If that's a good thing, but it's the enemy of the greatness of spending the time with your kids, then your list is wrong. What's your list? And so faith eradicates all reluctance. So if we can
Love
just
it.
give that little tidbit to the audience so that they can resist falling prey to the FOMO, then we've done our job.
Falling prey to the FOMO.
I love it.
All right.
Faith eradicates all reluctance. I have to say it a couple of times.
Yeah. Fear is a gift from God. It's just a matter of what's causing that fear and what we do with it.
Oh, those gifts. I know Erin knows I have a thing with gifts. Because the gifts that he gives us don't look very gifty
Right.
in the wrapping.
Right.
But they actually really are if you can just get through that poinky wrappy paper.
So
you know?
gift was a word for the year several years ago, and it is God is faithful today. So whatever he's giving you, whether or not it doesn't look so pretty with a bow and
Not
package,
look gifty.
and yet he's faithful in every single thing that he causes or that he allows.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose shorter words so I can do acronyms from now on. My words are going to change.
One of my favorite quotes is, "It's hard to see the picture when you're the one in the frame."
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
Oh, it's a quote morning.
It is. It's hard to see the picture.
BTW.
Yeah. LOL.
Sorry, Robin.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
This is a to be continued. Thinking it through
Absolutely.
with Robin Pou. So anyway, y'all
So
have
fun.
ideas, share them with us. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Okay.
having me.